Hello and welcome to the Rambling Movie Club podcast, where at the end of each episode I give us a movie to go away and watch, and sometimes it's old movies, sometimes it's what's out in the cinema, and then in the next episode we come back and talk about it. This week's movie was Avengers Endgame, which is the finale in the kind of saga of Marvel Cinematic Universe movies that have been going on for the last 11 years, and this is the 22nd movie in that kind of franchise, and it's definitely not the complete end, but it's kind of the end for now. It's a really good bookmark. Just a quick heads up, there will be full spoilers for Avengers Endgame in this episode, so if you haven't seen it yet, maybe wait until you have and come back, or feel free to skip this episode. Straight off the bat, I should kind of say I quite like this movie. I wouldn't say it's my favourite MCU movie. I think Thor Ragnarok is still probably my favourite, but I really enjoyed this movie still. For me, it's kind of on par with the original Avengers movie, which again I really enjoyed when it came out. The other thing as well, from the start I should say, I was really apprehensive about this movie being 3 hours long, because I'm not the biggest fan of the Marvel movies. There's some movies I like Thor Ragnarok, but that's kind of the exception, not the rule. There's a lot of the MCU movies that I don't like, or I'm kind of meh about. That's kind of where I stand. I didn't like Infinity War at all. It was an okay movie, but for a movie that's supposed to be the culmination of all of the other movies, or the start of this big culmination event, they did a really bad job of kind of getting all the characters together and trying to pay off everything that the movies have done. And this movie Endgame kind of showed how bad Infinity War was for me. And some other housekeeping just quickly. Normally when I do these movies, I kind of try to put together my thoughts and then group things. So if I want to talk about characters, I'll talk about all the characters together. Plot things, I'll talk about all the plot things together. Because Endgame is so long, and I didn't finish my thought. What I was going to say is, even though Avengers Endgame is 3 hours long, it didn't feel like 3 hours long, which I was pleasantly surprised by. Now, back to my second thought. Because Avengers Endgame is so long, I'm trying a different format where I'm going to kind of talk through the story and also just chip in with my notes and things I want to talk about as I go. This is different from, as I said, from how I normally do it. So if you prefer the old format or you like this new format, feel free to let me know on Instagram. I'm at Rambling Movie Club, so come let me know. So the movie starts kind of where the last one finished off, with half the universe dead, and you've got Iron Man and Nebula on the ship, and I really quite like their dynamic. They seem to work quite well. Of course, the big question, I feel a lot of people have this question, is how does Captain Marvel find them? Because the universe is huge, and apparently she's off doing space stuff. I've seen some fan theories of being maybe the Avengers knew roughly where they'd gone, where Titan was, and they sent Captain Marvel in that direction looking for them, and she managed to pick up the distress signal, but it was never actually explained in the movie, which I was just yeah, you could have explained that. Then they come back and kind of say what happens, and then the whole what's left of the team manages to find out where Thanos is. They go and fight him, find out he's got rid of the Infinity Stones, and then Thor kills Thanos, which I was I was not expecting that, all within the first half an hour, I want to say. Again, because this movie doesn't feel 3 hours long, it's really hard to tell time in it, so if I get anything wrong, yeah. And also, I've only seen this movie once, so if I do forget anything or get things confused, that's why. And then we jump forward 5 years. Ant-Man comes back from the quantum realm. You kind of see how much the world is messed up, as he's kind of wandering around and trying to figure out what's happened, because as we find out, he thinks it's only been 5 hours and he doesn't know why he was stuck, but then he finds out that half the universe is dead, or I should say gone, not dead. I thought this was really good, because normally we don't see the effects of another movie. It just kind of hits the ground running. It's let's go. Whereas this, you kind of see the power of what Thanos did, and it also gives more weight to why they're doing it. I think that's really good. It feels a bit slow, but also it feels necessary. I'm not sure how well that will hold up on rewatching, because you might be okay, I know what the stakes are, just get through it. But when I watched it, I thought it was worthwhile. And then you see he finds his daughter, who I thought they'd replace his wife with a different actress, because the actress they've got to play his daughter looks much older than 5 years older than the previous actress who played his daughter as a child. So I was really confused until he said Cassie, and I was that's his daughter? What? And then they kind of try and get the band back together and basically recruit a lot of other people to come together and hopefully fight Thanos and figure all this out. And this is when you find out that Hulk and Banner have kind of merged together. This is one gripe I've got. So they said Thor Ragnarok, Infinity War, and Endgame were kind of a trilogy for Hulk and telling a new Hulk story, but they really don't. Ragnarok starts that off where you've got this showing tension between the conflict between the two characters inhabiting one body. Infinity War was just Hulk's too scared, but then the director's Hulk's not scared, and it's well, say that in the movie then. And then in this, it's just all of a sudden they're at peace and they're one together, and it's where's the exposition? Explain, you're just kind of jumping around, kind of handled it really poorly. It's really nice to see the progression, but yeah, I just think it was handled badly. And although I said before, like, this movie doesn't feel like 3 hours, like, I was thinking about it, and like every scene in the movie kind of felt necessary. But like this scene in the diner with like Hulk, you got Captain America, Black Widow, and Ant-Man, this kind of goes on too long. And like the joke at the end where like the kids don't want to take a picture with Ant-Man, just like cringy and kind of unnecessary. And it's like you're already running at 3 hours and you're already missing stuff out, like with things like Captain Marvel, like not explaining how she finds Iron Man. Like, you could miss out this one joke, but at the same time, I get it's to try and bring some like lightness to it, but it's just like, maybe you could do it a different way. And then they carry on recruiting people, and they're going looking for Thor, and I love that the first person they run into is Valkyrie. I'd seen the like Tessa Thompson being like, yep, Valkyrie survived, and I was like, oh, she's just saying that, but I was like, it's so great to see this like side characters come back in. And then when they go to Thor's house and find that Korg and Mika there, and I was like, yes, like, I love Korg so much, and like Taika Waititi back as him, like, it's so great. And then you see Thor's kind of lost it all because he lost half of his people and didn't manage to kill Thanos, so he's like deeply sad and drinking and eating lots. Yeah, Thor's kind of the comic relief for this movie, but it's a lot of fat jokes, and the fact that he's like let himself go, which is kind of like, some of it's funny and some of it's like touching the line a bit much. So yeah, that's a tricky one. I love that they kind of keep going with the Ragnarok Thor. I'll talk about this a bit more later, but I like that they don't go back to the original Thor, because this Thor's much better. And then they managed, once they got the whole band back together, they managed to get time travel working. And again, this is one of my biggest problems with the movie, is the time travel. I think this is probably true for a lot of people watching this. The time travel is an absolute mess in this movie. When they explain the rules of time travel, which Hulk and Nebula are explaining to Ant-Man and Rhodey, I think it is, the way they explain it is they deliberately confuse the audience and like kind of just go back and forth and are all over the place, and it's just really badly done. And like they say, they deliberately confuse the audience so you misunderstand time travel, and so later on you can't really question it. Again, since watching it, I've seen like people talking about it online, and I kind of understand what they were going for a bit better. Basically what they're trying to say is you can do pretty much anything in the past and it won't affect the present or the future. And it's like they straight away after this as well, they say, oh yeah, like, because Rhodey's like, let's go back in time and just kill Thanos as a baby, and Hulk's like, oh no, you can't do it doesn't work like that. And then that's literally what they do in the movie. It's almost like they gone and looked at every other time travel movie and like got a book of time travel rules and be like, okay, step 1, don't meet with your former self, step 2, don't change things because it'll change the future. And it's like they looked at all these rules and like, that's interesting, and I threw them out the window. I was like, yeah, we're gonna make up our own rules. It's like, no, that's not how it works. So then they test out their time travel and they go back in time and to all the different movies. I quite like this, all the separate teams going to different event movies. Well, movies in general. Like, you've got, they go back to Avengers 1, Thor 2, I'm trying to remember the other movies they go back to. Guardians of the Galaxy, and yeah, it's the other two teams go to Guardians of the Galaxy, and they go to Guardians of the Galaxy, and then also to Black Widow and Hawkeye go to where the Soul Stone is. And again, this is kind of the start of more. Again, these problems I'm complaining about, they're not deal breakers, but it's just like, if they'd fixed these, it would have made it a better movie and made it like a really great movie. And basically, like, one thing they've stressed so much in all these movies, and it's even a massive plot point in Guardians of the Galaxy, is that humans can't handle Infinity Stones, but yet you see them handling them all the time in this. They're just like passing them around. Like, there's a bit of Hawkeye wakes up with one in his hand. It's like, and then also talking about the Soul Stone. So I liked the fact that you've got Black Widow and Hawkeye, who are like kind of equals and very close, them like battling it out to see who can sacrifice themselves. And you got Hawkeye, who's lost everything, and Black Widow, who's like, I owe it to my family to like bring them back because she's finally found her place in the world. And to be honest, like, it could have easily been either of them, but like, the reason is, like, I imagine Scarlett Johansson's contract's probably running out and Hawkeye's got a TV show coming up, so it was kind of like a no-brainer. But one problem you've got, and again, I'll talk about this a bit more later, but basically, because you assume that Black Widow's going to come back and that she's not actually dead, her death is kind of meaningless, because you're like, oh, she's not really dead, like, they're just going to get all the stones back and bring her back. But by the time you kind of realise that this isn't true, like, you've already kind of moved on and you're just like, so it's like you never really feel her death like you do with Iron Man at the end. And this is also kind of the same for Vision, Loki, and Gamora in the first part of this Infinity War. Because you just assume they're going to come back in this movie, you don't really mourn them or like feel sad for their deaths. And you kind of get to the end of this movie and you're like, oh, they're really dead. Like, so it's kind of, again, like, it's a bad... I get why they did it, because they were trying to like keep up the pace and they had so much to tell. But it's like, it's a bad way to handle these character deaths, and like you kind of make them meaningless. And then Tony and Captain America go even further back in time, because they manage to mess up getting the Tesseract and the Pym particles. I'll talk about the Tesseract bit towards the end, some of the other gripes I've got. They get all the gems together and Hulk reverses the snap and brings everyone back, and at the same time Thanos ends up in the present because you've got past Nebula is pretending to be current Nebula, sneaks to the present and then lets Thanos through. Super confusing. But I also noticed at the start, they've put key identifiers for all the characters to make them different from their past selves, and I'm guessing that was to try and throw people off. Like with the trailers and stuff, you watch them, like especially Black Widow's got like 3 different hairstyles in most of the trailers, and also you got some with like Captain America with a beard, some without. Like it was all to try and throw people off, which is good because going into this movie you kind of know very little. And then basically then all hell kind of breaks loose as Thanos is in the present and wants the gauntlet. Present Nebula and past Gamora sneak off the ship to go find past Nebula and kind of stop her getting the gauntlet. And then again, this is one of the big problems in time travel is present Nebula is killed by... No, I'm getting confused now. Past Nebula is killed by present Nebula, which should mean that she doesn't exist anymore. But with the way they set up the rules in this movie is so they can do whatever they want and there's no repercussions at all. And it's like... Like, you could have put in some effort. And then at the same time, you've got Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America fighting Thanos and trying to, like, slow him down a bit. I thought it was really cool. We've got, like, these 3 who kind of, like, especially in the first Avengers, when they first meet, they're at odds with each other and they're fighting. The 3 of them teaming up together and, like, taking on Thanos. And then, like, Thanos is kind of beating them all easily. It just shows, like, how good a fighter he is. Because, like, before this, he hasn't really done that much, like, any fighting, really. And then he breaks Captain's shield, which I think is a really good throwback to Avengers 2 when you see Tony's vision of the future, and in it you see the shield broken in half. They're definitely planning this for a while. This is the one moment I had spoiled for me before going into the movie, and that was that Captain America picks up Thor's hammer and fights with it. I thought it was a really cool moment, and when I watched this, like a lot of people in the movie theatre gasped. We're like, oh my god. Although the one thing I don't get is why now that Captain America's got the hammer and his broken shield, he can all of a sudden beat Thanos, despite the fact that Thanos was beating the 3 of them on his own before. Like, it kind of just doesn't really make sense. But it is a really cool moment, and that kind of cool moment kind of continues when you see how, like, when Thor's like, I knew it! Like, that's such a cool moment. The fact that, like, he's not embarrassed, he just kind of lets Captain America use it. I suppose he's got Stormbreaker, so he doesn't need both. But also, like, why does Captain America even try and pick up the hammer? Like, is he just like, I wonder if I'm worthy now, like in the middle of battle, when before he tried to pick it up and he couldn't, like, so it's kind of weird. But I love the moment when Captain America's got Stormbreaker and Thor's got hammer and he's like, no, you switch, you can have the little one. And I was like, that's such a great moment. And then you've got Captain America kind of standing against Thanos and his armies alone. A lot of people I've seen talking about this online have said, like, this is like a really powerful image. It's kind of cool, but I was just like, it's not that powerful. Like, not compared with, like, some of the imagery in Into the Spider-Verse. Like, it's like, that's so much more powerful. And then you kind of hear Falcon chirp up and go, on your left. And it's like, like, it was kind of obvious he was going to do that, but still it was nice to see that throwback. Then you see, like, all of the Avengers and, like, all of the army from Wakanda kind of come in. Although they're kind of just filler. They're not really necessary. I know people will say, like, they're there to stop the army, but it's just like, they're just there to have extra bodies. But yeah, it's really cool to see all the Avengers finally together. All the ones that were dead, all the ones that are still alive. Like, finally see them, like, this moment that's been building together for 11 years. Like, it's finally paying off. And then you got, like, the battle, and it starts. My favourite moment right at the start when Ant-Man turns into Giant Man and just punches the flying creature. And I was like, yes, go Ant-Man. I love Paul Rudd. Like, Paul Rudd as Ant-Man in this is, like, great. Like, he's one of the best bits of this movie. And then, like, the fighting carries on, and, like, you've got Scarlet Witch absolutely dominating Thanos, and the kind of exchange between them where she's like, you've ruined my life, you took everything from me, and Thanos like, I don't even know who you are. She's like, you will. Yes, like, go Scarlet Witch. And the fact that, like, Thanos is losing, he's like, no, like, bomb them. And even his soldiers like, no, like, you're gonna kill our own troops. Like, I don't care, like, save me. And then you got Captain Marvel shows up and, like, smashes the ship. Although, she kind of feels pointless in this movie. And again, I'll talk about this a bit more in a bit, but it's just like, she's just there to just serve one tiny plot point. She doesn't really do that much. So then they manage to get all the gauntlet, and you've got Spider-Man trying to, like, get the gauntlet around. And then the kind of big moment where Doctor Strange kind of points out to Tony, and he's like, puts the finger up to be like, this is the one. And just to be like, yeah, you've got to do it. You've got to sacrifice yourself. So Iron Man puts on the gauntlet and snaps, or clicks, as we would say in Britain. Clicks, and Thanos and all of his army dies. And with the line, I am Iron Man, like, it's such a powerful line. again, like such a callback to the very first movie. But again, continuing my time travel problems with this movie, this would create all kinds of paradoxes. Like, one of the common ones is if you destroy your reason to go back in time, then you never would have gone back in time in the first place, because you're like closing off the loop. So by killing Thanos, then basically none of Infinity War would have happened, and so there would have been no reason for him to go back, so that moment wouldn't have existed, and it's like it gets so complicated. And also the fact that past Thanos is in the present, like that just makes it so much more confusing. But again, in this movie, they're just like, yeah, do whatever you want, like there's no repercussions. And then you got the funeral scene, and again, like it kind of shows the contrast between the deaths in this movie, where you've got Iron Man, who is like has immediate death and immediate funeral payoff. You're like, he's not coming back, he's dead. And then it's only like now that you realise that like Black Widow, Gamora and stuff aren't coming back, and you could kind of argue that it's a funeral scene for like all the characters, but it doesn't really feel like it, to be honest. Like it's just for Iron Man, and like everyone there is for Iron Man. And like you go through the crowd and you see all the Avengers and stuff, and there's one kid on his own, and I was like, who the hell's this kid? And again, I only found this out afterwards. It's the kid from Iron Man 3. But it's been like a few years since then, and this kid's grown up, so he's pretty much unrecognisable. And then Thor goes off with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and you see him handing off like kingship to Valkyrie, which again, like how does that work with powers? Like Odin had all these powers, and also Thor had all these powers because he's a prince. Like, does she get extra powers? Does she become as powerful as Odin? Like, or does she become as powerful as Thor? Like, how does that work? Or is it kind of just like, nope, they're going to come like normal people, and like their magic's like diluted kind of thing as they go on? But another big problem I had with this and Infinity War is Thor Ragnarok made so much progress with Thor and like defining him as a new character and making him as someone different and someone interesting and good. And Infinity War and Endgame have kind of not quite throwing it all out. Like, I like this version of Thor, but I still prefer the one from Ragnarok much better. But this, they're just making him comic relief, make jokes about him being fat and hairy and getting drunk all the time. And then, like, at the end of Ragnarok, like, he accepts his responsibility that he should be king. Whereas in this, he's like, nah, you know what, I don't feel like it. And it's like, no, like, you're going backwards, like, keep moving forward. But then also, obviously, it's like, it's still going to be in Guardians 3. And so, like, that could be quite interesting to see the dynamic play out. But to be honest, like, I'd much rather, like, Thor Ragnarok 2 than seeing Thor in Guardians 3. Like, there are rumours that Taika Waititi's pitched Thor 4. Which I would definitely love to see. And then to finish off the movie, you've got Captain America goes back in time and takes all the stones back and becomes an old man. And it's nice to see that Captain America gets this happy ending. And also what's really interesting is you see Captain America and Iron Man have swapped places from where they were, like where they are in life, where like in the first like Captain America and the first Avengers, Captain America would sacrifice anything for anyone else. Like if it's to save lives, he would do anything. Whereas Iron Man is just like all about self-interests, and it's just like I'm not going to sacrifice. And it's even brought up, and like Captain America points out that he wouldn't sacrifice himself. And the fact that you see these two characters kind of switch completely, where Captain America's like, you know what, like I've done my bit, like I'm ready to go and have a life, and Iron Man's like, I'm going to sacrifice myself to save the whole universe. And I think that's just a really cool thing. So just some like other thoughts and stuff I've got about the movie. Again, like as I said, like I know I pointed out a lot of problems, but also like I really enjoyed the general tone of the movie, and like I said, I found it really enjoyable, and things like the joke of like, that's the America's ass, like I thought it was really good. I had some predictions going into this movie, so as with most people, I thought Iron Man and Captain America are both going to die because their contracts are up, but I also thought Thor was going to go off into space. For some reason I had a feeling that like, because the other two are like rigid, like no, we're out, whereas Chris Hemsworth's kind of like on the fence. I had a feeling he was going to go off into space and be like, oh, if you need me, call me or something. But I was wrong about Captain America, and it was nice to see that he had a happy ending. And I was kind of right about Thor, but also he's going to be like more, by the looks of things, he's going to be more concretely in Guardians 3, so we're probably going to see him in the future. As I mentioned before, Captain Marvel was kind of underused in this. Like, they kind of like hinted, obviously she was the post-credit scene at the end of Infinity War, and then also they had a whole movie about her like before this, so it's like, oh, she's going to be like a big part. It's like, she does two tiny things in this movie. She saves, obviously they're critical to the plot, but like she's only in it for like maybe 2-3 minutes. Like, she saves Iron Man and Nebula right at the start, and then she shows up to blow up the ship basically and to help get the gauntlet to Iron Man. Like, so yeah, she's just kind of underused. The other thing as well is like, I know I kind of pointed out at the start, Endgame is the movie Infinity War should have been. Like, this is so much more interesting, it's so much better interactions with the characters, and maybe it's because like the directors got more confident because it's like the second part of filming and stuff, so maybe they were getting to know the characters better and understanding what they were doing better. But also, this movie couldn't have worked without Infinity War. Like, you needed those stakes, you needed Thanos to click and get rid of half the universe, but it's like, again, it shows the contrast between the two, and like Infinity War could have been better than what it is. But the other thing I wonder is maybe it's because this has a happy ending, and it's quite a thing in movies. Like if you do a sad ending, it's really hard to do a sad ending that also is satisfying to the viewer. So I wonder if maybe like that's why this movie kind of comes off better, because it has like the big fight scene at the end where they win and stuff like that. It would have been interesting to see what Thanos is thinking, because like he wanted to get the gauntlet again, but this time he just like destroyed the whole universe and like build it back up again. It's like clearly he's got something else in mind than just trying to preserve peace and letting the universe prosper, but they kind of don't really dig into that. In the comics, like the whole reason why he does this is because he's in love with the personification with death, and basically he's like, I'm gonna kill half the universe for you, babe. And so he does it as like a sacrifice for her. So maybe that's almost what they're going for, but like they don't really talk about it. It's just a case of like, yep, I'm gonna grind down the universe, and that's about it. I found it really interesting how most of the fan theories were right, or most of the popular fan theories were right. Like the things with time travel being used through the quantum realm, and also like Hawkeye's family being his motivation. Like Hawkeye's family, like you could kind of see coming, like it's the only thing that would motivate Hawkeye to come back. But the time travel thing, like that's quite an abstract concept, so I'm wondering if there's like a leak or something that kind of put that thing out there. One of the plot holes I noticed, and it really bugged me towards the end when they were kind of closing off all of the other loops, was the fact that Loki escaped with the Tesseract and he was just kind of gone, and it really bugged me that they didn't fix this. And then when I was on my drive home after watching it, clicked, and I realised Loki's got a TV show coming out on Disney Plus this year. So obviously that's what it's going to be about, because Loki's dead in the present, but he's going to be on these escapades in the past, and then I'm sure at the end of it they'll be like, no, we've got to return you back to your time. And speaking of TV shows, it's going to be interesting to see, because there's a Falcon and Bucky TV show coming out. It'll be interesting to see what that's about now that Falcon's kind of taking on the mantle of Captain America. And a lot of people have kind of thought with Chris Evans kind of stepping out with this movie that either Falcon or Bucky would take on the mantle of Captain America. The last big question I had is, what happens with Gamora and Nebula? Because Nebula should be dead because she killed her past self, and Gamora is her past self existing in the present. Well, we think. It's kind of unclear what happens to her at the end, but you see Star-Lord looking for her, and like he can't really find her. So like, is Guardians 3 going to be all about trying to find Gamora again and like get her to fall in love with him? But then also, how does that work with time, because she's like 5 years younger than what she is now? And also, like, are there problems with like a past self existing in a time they shouldn't exist in? Like, time travel, eh? But I want to end on a positive note. I really liked how they put lots of throwbacks to lots of different movies throughout the MCU, so that like whichever one was kind of your favorites, you could kind of be like, yes, like I appreciate that. Like for me, like it was the appearances of Korg and Valkyrie and Meek, but then also you got things like, you got Avengers, obviously, Guardians of the Galaxy scene, like behind the scenes, and you've got like the elevator scene from Captain America 2, which they kind of subvert what you think is going to happen. And when you think it's like, it's all the same people, and you're like, okay, it's going to say, anyone want to get out before we start? And instead he just goes over and goes, Hail Hydra. Like, it's like, I didn't see that coming at all. So I really like that. But yeah, so it just like, and even like at the end, like when Wasp appears and she's kind of throwing back to Ant-Man and the Wasp, where she's like, okay, Cap, because they kind of had the joke about him calling him Cap. But yeah, I really liked it. It's not my favourite movie ever, but it's enjoyable, and like I said, even though I pointed out lots of problems, they weren't deal breakers at all. Also, what's interesting is I like how, this is kind of like my final thought, I like how they tie everything off, and it wasn't trying to build up to the next one. Like, there's maybe one or two lines that could be like teasers. Like there's the bit right at the start when, I can't remember her name, the bodyguard for Black Panther points out that there's been like earthquakes in the ocean. Some people have thought this is going to be like Atlantis, or like the Marvel version of Atlantis, because there's a superhero called Namor who lives in the ocean, and basically is Marvel's version of Aquaman, and it's thought maybe that could be like a reference to him, but there's no explicit thing, and like there's no post-credit scene building towards the future, which I quite like, that they were kind of just like, nope, like this is the end of everything we've done so far, like we're getting ready to start the next book. So yeah, it's definitely an enjoyable watch. What did you think of it? Like, is this your favourite Marvel movie or Avengers movie? Did you not like it? Do you wish there'd been more jokes about Captain America's bum? Let me know. As always, I'm on Instagram as Rambling Movie Club. Come let me know there. And as always, you can suggest movies for us to watch there too. And now that we're at the end of the episode, it's time to suggest the next movie. And the next movie is Meet the Robinsons, which, if you haven't heard of it, it's a Disney movie. It came out about 10 years ago, I think. It's a little bit old. But basically, it's about this kid inventor who is really smart and comes with all these inventions, but none of them ever work. and like whenever he gets towards finishing one, something goes wrong and he just gives up and moves on to the next one, and then he ends up in the future and meets this family of inventors, and they kind of change his perspective and help him to become a good inventor. It's it's probably my favourite Disney movies, so I really enjoy it, and yeah, I think it'll be a good watch. So come back next time to hear about that. As always, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.